Well, I work quite a lot on human capital development, and if you can think of that as a quite unified field that starts that concerns the build-up of skills and capabilities that allow people to define their standard of living. So, in some sense, it follows a person from the moment they are born all the way to the labor market, and addresses questions of child development, school quality, and adult labor market training. And we see that in a unified way, because one thing we've learned is that success builds upon success, and consequently it's very important to see how people accumulate these skills from the moment they start being on this earth, so the moment they've been born, if not before, through nutrition. There seems to be an emerging consensus that children who do not uh, get stimulated and do not come into contact with educational activities from a very, very early age build up developmental deficits. And this is particularly the case for children born in poverty. So we have, they acquire less language skills, they acquire less cognitive skills, and consequently by the time they are an age at which they go to school, they are not prepared for that, and this leads to a permanent deficit in their capabilities, which of course reinforces poverty and transmits poverty from one generation to the next. There's quite a broad understanding now that in deprived populations, parents are not offering their kids, for various reasons, the same opportunities as, say, middle class or wealthier households. So we try and think of interventions that reverse that and help deprived populations improve the skills of their kids so they can have a better opportunities. It's within the agenda of human development and equal opportunity. The most successful interventions that we have studied are stimulation interventions, where children are stimulated cognitively. Micronutrients are probably important, but we have not seen that big benefits. Stimulation interventions have been shown to be extremely successful when implemented at a very, very young age. The challenge is not so much to prove that stimulation can lead to large cognitive improvements. The challenge is to find ways of implementing that at scale, and as you said, at a limited cost. In India, for example, where we implemented these kind of interventions for very poor populations, stimulation interventions for children between 1 and 3 years old, it costs about $340 per child for 2 years. So it's not enormous, of course, relative to the per capita income of India. It is quite a lot, but that's exactly the challenge. The challenge is to take what we know from efficacy trials which have been shown to be extremely transformative for children from poor backgrounds, and translate that into a scalable policy that can have the same kind of effect. And that's the difficult part. It's not only the issue of cost, but it's how you implement a policy at, if you like, at a large scale, involving government bureaucracies on a perpetual and sustainable basis. I think this issue of scaling up human capital policies from a very early age needs a lot more work to understand how to do it, to understand what's important, to have a better idea of how stimulation and nutrition interact, because still, we have relatively limited evidence. And most importantly, as I said before, how to be able to make these kind of interventions part of the policy scene in a way that's effective and keeps being effective in the future. One thing we've been trying to do is we've been trying to study interventions that start at age 0 and continue all the way to school at age 5, rather than stopping at 2 or 3 or starting later. So one thing we don't completely understand is whether we really have to start very early on or not, and whether the early intervention needs to be supported by later interventions or the standard play schools are fine. So the kind of, in other words, the kind of package of intervention that you need in the entire preschool era, when they should start, and how long they should last is one of the big research questions. But the little evidence we have is that multilingualism probably stimulates the brain and leads to cognitive advantages. So if parents are worried that their kids are left behind, I would probably say that they shouldn't worry at all, and they should be very pleased with this multilingual environment.